She was kind of questioning me about what my practice style is. I couldn't quite get what she was trying to get down to in her questioning. Finally, she was like, "Can you do more than he does?" And I was like, "Well, I want to." And she's like, "Okay, because he's slow and we can do better than this."
We need to lead off with this. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Pursuit of Ownership. It is Payton here. I was supposed to be joined by Tyler, and he might hop in the middle, but we're not really sure. He's having some technical difficulties. But today we have a guest on. He's looking for a couple of practices. And what is going to be your fake name today?
Solomon.
Solomon. Awesome. Is there any good reasoning behind that? Is it just random, or how did you come up with that name?
Really, there's no reasoning at all. It's a random name. My wife thought it sounded like a good one.
Hey, that's good. Yeah, I know lots of times I'll default to my fiance for anything creative, so I definitely feel you there. And we did just have Tyler join. He seems to have overcome his technical difficulties. Tyler, welcome.
Hello. It is good to be here. I apologize for being a little bit late. Had a few things thrown my way, but yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. And I didn't catch the name.
It's Solomon.
Solomon. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a new one for sure.
I know. Yeah, we haven't had it, so I respect it.
Okay.
That's great. Yeah. So we'll go ahead and kind of dig a little bit in here, see what you've got. You said you have two practices we're going to look at today. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So we'll backtrack a little bit, see kind of where you came from, and then we'll go ahead and take a look at those. So if you wouldn't mind just giving us kind of a little bit of a rundown of, what got you to where you are now as far as like school experiences. And obviously you can say as much or as little as you want. We don't want to have you give away anything that you don't want to.
Yeah. Well, I grew up around dentistry. My dad was a dentist, private practice, solo doc, in a partnership. So I grew up seeing that and wanting to do something very similar. He retired long before I got into dental school, though, so I didn't have that chance. But I knew that was the direction I always wanted to go. So I took a break during college and went and worked in kind of the private business world and managed a couple of small businesses and worked my way up the corporate ladder. Did that for about 7 years before I finally jumped back to dental school, knowing that was always the eventual goal. And so, yeah, then jumped back to undergrad, finished that, went to dental school, helped start Entrepreneur Club at our school. Business has just kind of always been something I'm interested in.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I know you kind of said you always kind of had dentistry in mind. Did you go into those kind of smaller business opportunities with dental school being the final goal, or how did you approach those to help, prepare you for your future?
Yeah, I always knew that dentistry was the final goal. But I had some other goals I was working on, namely marriage. I was dating my wife and didn't want to jump back into school right away, and she wasn't looking to move right away. And so I stuck around back home and just looked for jobs, and that just kind of happened to fall in my lap that I got some of those. And so I managed self-storage facilities for a while and managed a U-Haul facility, and yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, you get some good leadership experience there and just kind of see how different businesses work. I think that's definitely helpful when it comes to running any small business. So moving forward to kind of when you're in school, what was your experience like there? Did you get a lot of clinical experience there? Did you feel like you were lacking in some areas? What was that like for you?
It's a mix of both. I feel like our school did a pretty good job with some things, and I still feel like I'm lacking in others. Surgery is one where I'll leave school with over 100 extractions, multiple surgicals, and fully impacted wisdom teeth. So I've done a good amount of that I feel comfortable with, but I'll probably leave with like 4 or 5 root canals that I've done, less than 10 crowns. So,
Wow, I was going to say that surgical experience sounds good, but I feel like that sounds pretty on par with the root canals and some of the other stuff.
Yeah, what are they training you guys for, man?
I know, right?
Yeah, what kind of dentistry they want you to be doing? That's cool. Yeah, it sounds pretty innovative.
When did you stumble upon, starting to look for opportunities? I guess, when did you start getting into the podcast world? What led you to where you are now?
Yeah, so I had a gap year in between leaving undergrad and starting dental school. And the job I worked in, I had a 45-minute commute each way. So that's when I started getting into podcasts. And so I didn't start getting into dental ones until I got into dental school. in my mind, I just thought the dental podcast wouldn't be a thing because that's not cool. But yeah, then I found out there's a whole world of it. So yeah, my D1 year, I got into shared practices back before George was even a part of it. So yeah, it was cool to be able to watch the progression of you guys get to where you are now.
Yeah, that's awesome. You're an original listener. That's awesome. I feel like lots of times now we get people that have kind of started listening like halfway through, or a lot of it was already out. So it's cool to be able to see the progression of everything. Great. Yeah. So through listening to the show, what has become apparent to you that you want out of, your ownership and dental career?
More than anything, I just realized that there's options. I didn't really even I didn't understand group practice kind of ideas before dental school. I figured everyone either worked for a DSO or you worked in a solo practice. I had never really thought about the idea of a group practice or the possibilities that are around that. So yeah, but being able to listen to you guys, other podcasts, I've realized that I just have options. And so I'm still kind of in the middle of that, where I know that I want to be solo for a little while, because that was always kind of my dream. But at the same time, I've realized that I kind of like the idea of the flexibility and the possibilities that can come from having a couple other doctors with me there.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So you mentioned, kind of a charged word there. You said that being a solo was your dream. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Honestly, I think a lot of it comes back to I really admire my dad, and I admire what he achieved as a dentist. And so I think a lot of me was trying to be like him, and that was all I had seen before getting to dental school. And so to me, that was just kind of the ultimate goal, was to be like that. And yeah, the original episodes with Justin Short kind of hit home that I really liked a lot of that model for a long time. But yeah, and then the more I've listened, though, the more I've realized that there's other possibilities out there where I can still have a good lifestyle, still have everything that I ever wanted within dentistry, within my career, and still be able to have a really good home life. And it doesn't have to be all dependent on me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's hard not to get sucked into the productive solo mindset. Not that it's a bad thing, but I think it's very easy to see the benefits of it. Like it's relatively straightforward. You can make a good income. But when you start to look at it more long-term, you see, okay, this is all dependent on me. And it's not that you can't take vacation. That's not what I'm saying at all. But it's just that you have to be there for it to be functioning, providing for you, providing for your patients, et cetera. So I think that's kind of the mindset shift that we see for a lot of people, is they see the solo first, like, okay, this sounds great. It sounds awesome. But then they start getting into it a little more. They start thinking long-term, what they want for themselves, what they want for their family. And you kind of start to see, like, in the group model, it can provide a lot of those things.
Yeah. And I think that, in your career history, albeit brief as all of ours are so far, there's maybe some clues that being a group owner and being a leader of teams might have been more appropriate for you. I mean, you said you started the entrepreneurial organization at your school. Is that right? Did you get anything from that kind of gave you a clue that, leadership was important to you, that having maybe a larger team would be something that would be more befitting of your skills?
Yeah, I think if nothing else, it helped me just reflect more on my past work experiences. And I realized how much I enjoyed the team aspect, that it wasn't just the leading a small team, but it was helping other leaders around me to do better. So I just felt like those experiences had made such an impact on me that I just hadn't realized until recently.
Okay. Yeah. Very nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So right now you're looking at some practices, correct?
Yeah.
So are you looking for a solo practice? Are you looking for a group practice? What are your kind of search criteria you're looking for right now?
More than anything, I knew that ownership was what I wanted. So I was kind of looking for anything with the ability to transition later to more of a group. I honestly didn't think that I could find much of an actual group practice coming out of school that I was going to be able to purchase. So yeah, I kind of was looking for anything that I thought had the potential for later.
Absolutely. And were you pretty specific on kind of location? Like, were you looking at a very tight search radius? Are you looking kind of for wherever the opportunity was? What did that look like for you and your family?
So I actually did a mailer campaign, kind of following the old practice steps there.
Awesome.
But yeah, so I did 2 rounds of it. We were looking mostly on the West Coast. We finally decided mostly in one state. And so I sent letters to probably about half the state, maybe a little over half the state, about 300 letters the first time. And then, yeah, from the responses I got from that, it kind of really helped us narrow down that, maybe we didn't want this area or this area. So we kind of narrowed it down. The second round, I only sent out 120. But yeah, and so it helped to narrow down the location at least. But that was still about a 3-hour radius between all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm kind of noticing that same thing too with, sending out to a larger area. And then as soon as, like, let's say an opportunity comes up in a specific one, you kind of start to realize, like, after like digging in a little bit more in that specific area, you're like, ooh, like, maybe this isn't somewhere that I want to live. So I can definitely see where you're coming from with kind of narrowing down further from, whole state to a more specific region. So yeah, let's go ahead and kind of get into what you have brought for us today. I guess you can just start with an overview of the first one, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so the first one that I have is a 9-op practice, but it's only a single doc right now. He's been there by himself for a while. There used to be some other partners, but they've since retired. But yeah, so 9 ops. It's all older equipment though, so there will be some updating. He was producing just over 800, but only collecting 750. But a decent overhead, mid 60s if I remember right. Yeah. What else do you want to know about that one?
Yeah. Is he doing a lot of specialty procedures?
Mostly bread and butter. He does do some extractions, but he refers out the more difficult stuff. He says that he doesn't really refer out endo, but he only did like 30 or so root canals last year. So okay. I'm not sure if the need just isn't as much there. Yeah, it doesn't seem like he's doing a lot of the more specialty stuff now.
Yeah, that's definitely good for you. Have you gotten a chance to ask him why his building's so big and why he's not doing, or not why he's not doing a lot, but just out of curiosity?
So he doesn't double book himself. He only runs himself out of 1 op, and he just likes to be slow. Yeah.
Okay. So how many ops does he use on a given day? Do you know?
No more than 4, and that's if he has the 2 hygienists there.
Uh-huh. Interesting.
Are those 2 full-time hygienists, or what's the deal?
One's part-time.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, it's a very interesting proposition there. You would think with all that space, he'd either want to capitalize on it or find a smaller space. Has he been in this space for a while, or is this a recent move for him? What's that look like?
Yeah, so he's been there almost his entire career. He's been there over 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Impressive.
I'm starting to get a profile here.
Yep.
Okay, Tyler, what do you think about this?
I want to hear a little bit more about what Solomon thinks about it, overall vision, and what he thinks it might take to get it there.
One of the big pros is just that it already has that space to grow into. I haven't found any other practices that had that kind of a space already ready. I like that he has the charts for all of these other doctors that he bought out as they retired. It concerns me a bit that he's still only producing the 800 or so off of 3 doctors worth of charts.
Huge space. He bought the charts. He still has a hygienist and a half. So I'd be curious, is he booked out like half a year for hygiene? Like, is he, you know what I'm saying? Like, where are all these patients? Like, are they just not being scheduled? Has he given anything as far as like active patient number?
Around 1,200. I haven't confirmed it yet.
Normally, they give you a higher number of active patients than they actually have. And if he's already bought in 2 charts, then what was the practice? Did he give you previous production reports, previous years?
For himself, yeah. And it's been consistent. If anything, It's dropped at like 20 grand in the last 3 years.
Okay. So relatively stable.
Yeah.
And when did he purchase these charts?
I don't know. I need to ask him about when those happened.
Yeah. I feel like maybe it could have been a ways back. Were those other dentists working in the same space?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. At some point, all 3 of them were there together. I don't know how the timeline worked. He mentioned that one of them he retired long enough ago that he's already passed. So I think it was a while.
How does his timeline mesh up well with yours?
So that was one of the things that I was kind of insistent on looking for coming right out of school, that I wanted about a 6-month transition. Didn't really want much longer than that. But yeah, luckily, before I could even mention that, he said he wanted to retire about 6 months after I'd be looking to come on.
Okay. So you'd ideal would you guys both be there for 6 months, help kind of transition patients, goodwill, all that kind of stuff, and then have him walk out the door?
Yep. Yeah, he'd only be there about 2 days a week during that time. But yeah.
Okay. So still hopefully leave enough for you to stay busy while he's still there.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And tell me a little bit about let's think marketing for a second. So, what's the new patient flow like? What's this location like? Are there any low hanging fruit for attracting new patients?
So that was kind of, I guess, a pro, but at the same time, a flag for me was that they know nothing about their own numbers. He has a front desk, one front desk that is also the office manager of the 3 employees. But yeah, I was told to talk to her about all the numbers, and she said that they might have 5 to 10 new patients a month, but they don't track it. They don't know where they're coming from. Their guess is that it's word of mouth because he does put $0 into marketing.
And I love that. We might have 5 to 10 new patients.
Yeah.
That confidence is inspiring.
Reviews, street visibility.
The street visibility is great. It's on a pretty busy street right around some big schools. And so yeah, the visibility is really good, but they're just not trying at all with that. It could be improved.
Okay. I mean, I guess that's good. Like ideally we'd like to see a little bit more like new patients, but then again, I mean, they could be getting more and you just have no idea.
Yeah. When you ask reviews, I think he's at 10.
10 reviews.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely need to pump those numbers up a little bit.
Yeah. And when I asked about that, they kind of said, "What reviews?"
Yeah. Oh, man, it's always a good sign.
Yeah.
So what has stuck out to you as some potential negatives or things that are kind of scaring you away?
I guess just kind of what we were saying before is trying to figure out what's going on with the space. Why is it so large, and why is so much of it being unused? I guess in a way, kind of the growth. I see a lot of potential for growth, but at the same time, that is kind of a flag for me. That why is there no growth happening right now?
Well, I suspect it might be for lack of trying. Yeah, I gotta be honest, man. I mean, this is really sounding like someone that's just been in there for a long time and has been pretty complacent with their station and life and in their practice, and it's just been stagnant and for good reason. I mean, it sounds like at some point, it was a bustling group practice, and that space was being used a lot more efficiently. And at least at one point there was a patient flow and charts that could support 3 doctors, as you said, and I assume there were more hygienists there, to support those 3 doctors at some point, unless they were just very part-time. I mean, I'm not terribly concerned about underperformance, knowing that there's very little effort or systemization going on at all. I think a lot of it you almost have to look at as somewhat of a pseudo startup, really. Like you're looking at demographics, you're looking at what's being done, what can be done to try and drum up to new patients and grow up that hygiene and kind of start to build up some diagnostics. So it's like you're coming in with a practice that is an underperforming solo practice with not a whole lot of hygiene, not a whole lot of recall going on, and you're trying to build it up into something greater and help it grow into itself. It's already got much larger capacity. So interesting opportunity. What was the sale price on this one?
$600.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not bad. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting opportunity you have. And like you're saying, Tyler, like it's pseudo startup, but it's not at the level of like your typical like pseudo startup. Like most of those are like producing under 500K, like they're in a small space. This like definitely has some group practice vibes kind of built into it. Yeah.
There's potential there.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Yeah, that sounds like definitely a good one you have there. Would you want to go ahead and dive into the other one you brought for us?
Yeah. So the other one kind of struck me from that solo doc perspective as being an already pretty ideal practice. She is that doctor's really kept up with the practice. It's very modern, very aesthetic. Everything looks really nice. It's a very inviting practice with very modern new equipment. Does a lot of CEREC, does a lot of scanning. Doesn't place any implants, which is something that I plan on doing. But yeah, it's producing about $1 million a year and has been for the last few years. She even was doing 1.2 before she cut back a day. But yeah, and she's just looking at retiring early. And so she's looking for someone to transition out with it. So there'd be a bit more of a transition time with her. She's not totally sure exactly when she'd be out of it. So she's looking for more of a partnership with the intention to buy out within the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay. How many ops was this one again? I might have missed it.
Yeah, no, this one's 5 ops, potentially a 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Gosh, she like not being sure about the timeline is like, I don't know, it's like scares me a little bit.
Yeah, we had 2 really good phone conversations before I went out and actually met her in person. That was never mentioned before. And then I met her in person and she started talking about the timeline and not being sure, and really her ideal is a partnership. She would still be open if I really didn't want a partnership. She said she'd still be open to just selling it and either working back with me or even her just leaving. She'd be open to that. But her ideal would be a partnership.
Okay. Yeah, that might be kind of some hard bargaining on the front end on her part. I would definitely, make that a non-negotiable. 3 to 5 years. No, absolutely not. That sounds terrible. I mean, also this is not a person with that has a lot of conviction about that. I think there might be maybe some reticence about selling or retiring there, going on there personally and professionally. But I think that you counter that with being very intentional about what it is that you want, and it's kind of in their court to decide where they want to go from it. But I wouldn't consider partnership an option in this case.
No, and I had told that to her that's not really what I was looking for.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I would want the dish on your own pros and cons and what you see here, given that the transition would be what your ideal is.
So I like that hers is already updated and everything. It has all of the more modern things that I'm used to right now coming out of school. So I like that. I like that she does a lot of marketing. She's spending a decent amount on marketing every year. And she is a big CE junkie herself. And so she has a lot that I feel like she could also mentor me with coming right out of school. She does a lot of full mouth rehabs, a lot of advanced Invisalign cases, which are things that I want to get into. So there's a lot of that potential there, but the income potential and the ability to really make it a true group practice, being just the 5 ops, is limited. That'd be my biggest cons for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's with this one you're walking into essentially it's what seems like a pretty solid solo.
Yeah.
Whereas with the other you're walking into a kind of underperforming solo with the potential to become a group. And I don't think you brought this up. Is there any opportunity to expand with this 5 op space? Is there any adjacent spaces, or is it a freestanding building? Is there anything like that we need to know about?
So it is a freestanding, and next door is an endodontist, 2 endodontists. She did mention that they're getting older, but I don't know if they'd be, I don't know what the potential there would be to try to expand into their space. Right behind her is a completely empty lot that could be used. It's zoned for commercial, so it could potentially be used. But I'd have to look into all that, but that would be having to build from the ground up.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily something to scare you away from this one. It sounds like there's some opportunity out there.
I've been a listener and a huge fan of the Dentist Money Show since the beginning. Not only do I love Reese Harper and Ryan Isaac and their banter and their stories and their analogies, but this is something I'm passionate about: financial freedom in the context of being a business owner. So our finances are more complex than the average person's. I used to be a big Dave Ramsey follower. I'm now kind of a Dave Ramsey apostate for dentists in particular. The reason being, if you take those baby steps and apply them to your $400,000, $500,000 of student loans, you would never buy a dental practice because you'd be stuck paying that down for years and years and years. There are better ways to manage your finances in the context of dentistry and practice ownership. Dentist Advisors brings that to you in their weekly podcast, The Dental Money Show. And just as importantly, they do it in an entertaining, enjoyable way. Join thousands of dentists who are learning how to make smart financial decisions. You'll be entertained while getting straightforward advice about investing, retirement planning, tax reduction, insurance, debt management, and personal finance. For me, some of the most beneficial moments have been number one, feeling control of my financial situation to the point where I can spend money and not feel bad about it. Number two, I was recently shopping for a home. Banks will lend you a ton of money being a dentist. How do you know what percentage of your income you should dedicate to housing and the true costs there versus being hamstringed because you've overbought and overextended and are unable to weather financial storms? So I want you to do one thing right now, which is stop what you're doing. You're already in a podcast app. Search for the Dentist Money Show and hit subscribe. It's legitimately the only dental podcast that I keep up with other than Shared Practices. Once again, it's the Dentist Money Show. Search, subscribe, and enjoy. Do it now.
What's the location like for this one compared to the 9-op?
So that is one of the interesting things with this one. They're both actually in the same town. And the town only has about 30,000 people, about 20 docs. And so I guess of those 20, 16 are all on one side of the highway and 4 are on the other side. So that 9-op is on the more populated side where the 90% of the doctors are. And this other one, the 5-op, is on the side where there's almost no doctors around her at all. And there's a good amount of population. There's a little more growth on that side, a little, not like an astronomical difference in growth between the two sides of the city, but more on hers with less doctors. And she's right next to a hospital. So anyone that goes to the hospital has to drive right by her practice.
Yeah, that's a good point. What about like just grocery stores, like shopping, or compared?
Yeah, it's 2 blocks away from the large shopping center that has grocery stores, and there's no other big shopping in the area. But yeah.
Yeah, that's tough. They're what do you think, Tyler?
Yeah, so you mentioned that she's already doing a lot of marketing. So what are the fruits of that? So what's new patients looking like? How many hygienists does she have? How many hygiene days would you approximate?
Yeah, so that's where I think there is some potential there, because she's getting 42 new patients a month on average, excluding the COVID months, but that's over the last 2 years, 42 a month. And yet still only producing the million. So I kind of wonder what potential there is, or where there's a hole, because I feel like the potential is there for more. She has the 2 hygienists right now doing the 8 days a week.
Yeah. It looks like, I'm looking through the spreadsheet you sent us. It looks like she's spending about 3% of her overhead on marketing. I wouldn't say that's the most aggressive budget.
No.
How's she doing on Google reviews?
Yeah, she's got, I think it was 115 or so. Put her at like number 3 or 4 out of those 20 docs.
Yeah, I would say these are moderate efforts with moderate to above average results. Definitely some improvement could be done there. But ultimately, like if we're talking about growing this into a group practice, you really have to talk about, what capacity there really is for it. And, what you have is 5 ops.
Yep.
Right. So that means either expanding into an adjacent space. Doesn't look like you necessarily really have something, a bird in the hand, so to speak, there, or moving the office, which, you said you do have that lot in the back. There might be something there. So that could be a potential pivot down the road. You just kind of grow out the charts and, have work yourself into a successful solo practice for a while. And then you could potentially pivot that into, moving the office perhaps into that space behind you. And then, maybe you have a little bit more room for that group practice that you're looking for, but you just have this sort of transitional period getting to where you want.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm seeing for that. So you mentioned mentorship. You might, want some of that. Can you talk a little bit about what you're really looking for with that and how that kind of fits into your greater vision?
Well, maybe I'll even kind of want some of your guys' feedback on that, because I feel like part of my mind when I'm thinking about the mentorship idea, I get more just from what I hear everyone else talking about. Because you hear people about wanting mentorship coming out of school. And part of me is not really sure how much I really need with that in terms of the bigger procedures like a full mouth rehab or Invisalign, because I can always do that down the road. I don't necessarily need a doctor right there with me to be holding my hand. I don't need to jump into all that right away.
Yeah. Do you want to do those things?
I do want to. I think my ideal for the group practice idea would be that I'd have a couple of full-time associates and me being that part-time specialist kind of doc.
Okay. So like
taking on those bigger, more advanced cases.
Yeah.
like a multi-capable super GP,
Yeah.
just kind of doing what you want. Heard you like implants. I heard you like full mouth rehab. Big into digital dentistry, a lot with the CAD/CAM stuff.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that if that is sort of your long-term thing, you can be looking for stuff like that. It's not necessarily though, how much mentorship you need, but also how much mentorship you would really get in the situation. I don't know that this seller is really the person that's going to get you there. I feel this is purely intuition speaking, but I feel that you are going to lead yourself there in your own journey. I don't think that this person is the one that's going to give you the leg up for that.
That's a good point.
Yeah, just based off of what they're currently doing in their practice. I mean, not exactly killing it. I mean, this is like a moderately successful solo, but certainly not like a super GP either. Utilizing CAD/CAM, great. But is that person really going to take you to where you're trying to go? No, I think that that's probably going to come from other opportunities that you find, as you go along. Unless you just completely pivot away from this and found something a little more fruitful, like a residency, or like someone that's like actually doing a whole lot more and is really, willing to spare their time to teach you those things. I mean, maybe that's something you could entertain. But if for you, that's not really on the table and ownership is what you want right now, I wouldn't see mentorship clinically in either of these opportunities.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like on that same note, to get the amount of clinical mentorship and mastery that you'd want, I don't think you'd want your transition period to be that long. Because I mean, I feel like it would take years, and you don't want someone sticking around for years and years. I feel like you just, even though you're the one that's in charge, you're still going to have them kind of like they've been the boss for X amount of years. And I think with lots of times that can hinder kind of where you want to take the practice and really tailoring it to what you want your life to look like.
Yeah.
Especially with staff. I worry about the staff with that aspect of kind of having the two bosses now.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a very good point. And that's a touchy thing. You kind of have to navigate it. If this were like a really great opportunity that you would want to pursue for that reason, then that would be something you'd have to really work with and it'd be, touchy. But also, you look at it, big picture. I mean, this is a 5-op practice. Like, is it really going to, I mean, this is like minimally viable. We're talking about to have, 2 full-time docs in there. Maybe the seller could be stepping back and coming in maybe a couple of days a week or something like that or whatever. But, yeah, I don't like that either. I think for you, this is like, if you were to go with the 5-ops, that is you coming in, maybe there's a transitional period or whatever you like. But then it's your office and, you're doing the solo thing for a bit. And then there's a pivot later on, to a real group practice that has a little more room, for you, if that's what you went for. How does that resonate with you?
Yeah, no, that's kind of where I'm at with it too. I was thinking that one sounds like a great solo practice, but it would require some pretty big pivots down the road. Whereas the 9-op, there could be a choice for a pivot if I decided that I want to really get on the more of the group practice mentality and get the other doctors in there, then I could. Yeah. Otherwise, if I really just wanted to keep it solo, I could, but I don't think that I'm leaning that direction. So I'd already have the potential there.
Yeah. And how many hygienists in the second one with the 5-ops?
2.
2. Okay.
2 full-time, you said, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So going back to the 9-op one, is there growth in that area similarly to the 5-op practice? Because I know you said there's some good growth happening near the 5-op practice, but do you see that same thing happening by the 9-op one?
There is. I don't think it's as much. There's like a whole new community on the lesser populated side of doctors. But yeah, where the 9-op one is, there is still some new growth. I just don't think it's as much new growth.
Yeah. If the 5-op practice had more ops, I feel like this would be such an easy decision.
That's kind of what I said. If I could take the 9-op and move it to where the 5-op is, it'd be a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very rarely is there a option that checks all the boxes.
I know.
So it's kind of deciding where you want to make those sacrifices and then being able to move forward with them.
And what was the sale price on 5-op?
I'm the first person she's even talked to about it, so we didn't really have a price on it yet.
Yeah, so probably just rule of thumb, last year's collections, whatever, 2/3 of that, probably something actually pretty similar to the first option.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah. Yeah. So how do you feel between the two? I mean, it sounds like, Solomon, you kind of had a lot of predispositions on these that we haven't really uncovered a whole lot of new insights. I don't think. Like, I think you kind of knew coming into this what you really had on the table. So where are you feeling between the two?
Yeah, I think where my holdup has been the most is I see all the potential of the 9-op, but I also see the work that has to be done. I mean, it's that practice has been there for so long that there's a lot of updating that has to be done. But at the same time, like, I mean, I've done house flipping before, and I love that side of things.
Really?
But I actually, yeah, so I kind of excites me to be able to do a lot of the updating there.
Cool.
So on one hand, while I see the risk of that, I see the enjoyment that I would get out of that. Whereas at the 5-op, it's already modern and nice. And I'm not sure there's a whole lot I could do to that. So I feel like it'd be hard for me to ever really feel like it was mine when it looks the same as it did when I bought it. Whereas, yeah, I feel like with the 9-op, I could do so much to that over the next few years that I could really make it feel like it's mine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you can kind
Yeah,
of tell.
I like the sound of that.
Over the last few days, the more I've thought about it, the more I'm leaning towards that one.
Yeah, there is substantially more excitement for that opportunity than the other one. Yeah. Yeah, man.
And
Go ahead, Payton. Sorry.
I was gonna say, and the thing is too, like, obviously you guys can't see this, but like when Tyler and I asked him that, like we can see each other's faces when we're recording here, and I feel like his face just kind of like lit up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was excited about like the chance to like, make it his own, like grow it into something that's his. And I mean, obviously that's an intangible thing, but it's super important. Like if you can go to the office and be like, I created this, like this is my baby, and like I brought this from where it was to where it is now, like it's priceless. It's priceless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'd like to borrow a phrase from an anonymous doc that Payton got in touch with through his mailer, and what was it that he tagged on to the end of that email? Sure, you can be successful when you buy a practice, but will you be fulfilled?
Oh yes, that's the one. Yeah.
My favorite guy.
He didn't want to sell me the practice, but he was offering wise advice for sure.
Yeah. I think that actually is pretty pertinent here. I think that given your personality and your sort of self-starter, history, in the house flipping, which actually is that's a pretty good one. I think that's a good insight into who you are, Solomon, and what gives you energy. Yeah, I'm definitely leaning towards that. I think that your three options to begin with were 9-op, 5-op, or do nothing. Right? There's always the do nothing option. And wait for like a different opportunity. But like I think if you're really if you're tied down on this location and this is where you guys want to be, you've already done 2 rounds of mailers. Graduation's coming up relatively soon. If you say, it's ownership now, that's what I want, then it's really, for you, I really do feel pretty strongly about 9-op. Yeah. Is it a perfect opportunity? No, but rarely do we ever see them on here. We've seen them, but like, that's not exactly what one can reasonably expect. It's like, you're not necessarily trying to find the perfect practice. You're just trying to find something really fun and challenging and potentially, lucrative, something that will, check your boxes in relatively short order. And I think you found something here. But you have your obstacles, and I think you've identified them for the most part.
Yeah.
No,
I agree.
I think Mr. 9-op sounds like it has Solomon written all over it.
Yeah, man. I really want to see what happens when someone goes in that office and just tries. Yeah. Because I think that you're going to find in your conversations with this person, this is just someone that, really had a good chance to retire, some time ago, and didn't do it then, and is kind of just thinking about it now, and there's been a decline. I think if you look further back and the reduction here and the opportunities that came along, there were opportunities to grow this into something more like what you wanted. And when you get in there, I think you're gonna make it happen. It's long overdue.
Yeah, it was actually pretty awesome. I sat and talked with the office manager for a bit without the doctor around.
Yeah,
and she was kind of questioning me about what my practice style is. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't quite get what she was trying to get down to in her questioning. Finally, she just kind of was like, "Can you do more than he does?" And I was like, "Well, I want to." And she's like, "Okay, because he's slow, and we can do better than this."
Wow, really?
Yeah.
I love
We need to lead off with this. That's
I
hilarious.
love that. I really do. That is awesome. How long has that
Yeah.
office manager been there?
30 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
Wow. You know, I was worried a little bit about the team having been there so long and like what their mentality was going to be and like how they would perceive someone like you coming into that opportunity.
Yeah.
That is the best thing you could hear, I think. I mean, it really is.
Well, part of the reason she went that route is because my first questions to her were, I know that you and the hygienist have been here a while. Are you guys retiring with the doc? And she was like, oh, I'm only 60. I'm not going anywhere yet. So she's staying
Wow.
around. The hygienist is leaving, but the hygienist has been there 42 years.
Yeah, that's not a bad thing. I mean,
yeah.
you know, I mean, okay, like this is someone that's been there a long time. You know, they probably have like really strong and lasting relationships with that patient population. And, you know, this population is going to be seeing a newer, younger doc and a whole new hygienist. And that's going to disrupt some of the goodwill you're buying into. You know, no question about that. So that's a new obstacle for you. That's going to be something you have to navigate. And, you know, there's going to be that transition there. If I remember correctly, this doc was willing to stay on for a bit.
Yeah.
Okay. That can mitigate that, I think. I don't think you're going to want them around forever though. Not for very long.
No.
Yeah. So yeah, man, I mean, this is the pseudo startup play. Yeah. That's how I see it, Payton.
Yeah. I think it's awesome that the office manager said that. I feel like lots of times the concern is actually the opposite, where you're like, oh, like, are these people going to want to be able to do more? And on the flip side, like, you generally have a doc, it's like asking more of the team than they're willing to do. But this is like the opposite. I honestly have never seen this before, but it sounds promising.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think this completely throws 5-op out of contention. It's just that's a totally different play. It's like you're not trying to rehab this underperforming solo practice. You're rather just, you know, stepping into that, trying to recapitulate it, and just sort of like you know, bide your time until you find like a different place to work yourself into. And it's like, you know, successful solo ownership kind of ready made for you, and you'll have that time period while you look for a pivot. Versus, you know, this sort of like, you know, flipping this thing that is already much larger, letting that be your location as it is, and growing into it, and letting it perform the way it really wants to, the way it deserves to. I think your biggest things are going to be attracting new patients, growing out this recall, replacing that hygienist, and you know, that's going to take some time for sure. But I think you're really going to be proud of yourself when you know, actually help this thing start to realize its potential.
Yeah, I agree with Tyler for sure. It's kind of another it's more delayed gratification. You know, dental school, you have the delayed gratification of, you know, being in school, paying a lot of money, and then you finally get out on the other side and you're like, oh, this is pretty nice. So I feel like this 9-op practice is a similar situation. Like, it might not be as good initially, but I think long term it's definitely going to be the best for you and what you're looking for.
Yeah, but I will clarify though that I do think in the short term, you know, if you were thinking about like, you know, having a successful practice like over the next like year or two, and like how much money you're going to make, and you know what's going to be there for you, 5-op is actually going to be better, right? Yeah. Like it's more ready made. There's a larger recall pool right there. You know, you can have yourself a nice little you know, bit of equity in like a functional practice in the fairly short term. And like, if that's something that you're more comfortable with, that's still perfectly fine. Like, I'm not like throwing that out by any means. It just doesn't have as much room to grow. And then, you know, there's the pivoting of, you know, having to move the office into somewhere else. And, you know, you're just like continuing this process towards getting to where you want. And it's, you know, it's a journey either way. You just pick which one you want.
Yeah.
But yeah, awesome. You know, I hope we've kind of helped provide some clarity for you. It sounds like, you know, you really did your homework and you did a great job finding yourself some opportunities. So I totally applaud you for that.
Yeah, thank you. And really, I can't thank you guys enough for helping with all this, because really that mailer campaign was pretty huge. I didn't talk about the other ones that I had, but yeah, I mean, I had near about 20 different opportunities.
Did you?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so we
kind of really good response rate.
Yeah, so we kind of pared those down, and I went out there last month and went and talked to about eight different docs that I went and interviewed, saw the practices, and really kind of decided which ones we were leaning towards. And Some of them were just too small. I mean, I saw a couple of 2 and 3 out practices, and it was like, nope. But there were plenty of others that were solo docs, like that 5-op one. That hers was the best of kind of that solo idea. But yeah, I mean, I can't talk enough about doing a mailer campaign for anyone else looking to find opportunities.
So I just want to clarify. So you sent out 300 mailers, like 300 different dentists. I know you said you did 2 rounds, and you got 20 responses.
Yep.
Wow.
Did you resend to some of the same people on the second try?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So in total, it was like about 400. But yeah, 100 of those were mailed twice. That was my first round was 5 months ago, and I still got another call yesterday from another doc.
Wow.
I'm still getting calls. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a COVID effect too. Yeah. Somebody got that and then just kind of sit on the desk for a while, and now they're starting to think about it again.
Yep.
Beautiful. Could you estimate, I'm just curious, between like your first and second round, how many people that you contacted the first time that didn't responded the second time? Do you have any idea?
Yeah. So that second time, I think I got another 5, I'd say, from the second time.
Yeah. Second round's huge. Yeah. Definitely plan for a second round.
And those were probably some of the better ones.
Really? Yeah. Oh, I love hearing that, man. I love hearing that. So where in your dental school journey did you start the first round? You may have covered this before.
So it was in July. Yeah, July. So in between 3rd and 4th year.
In between 3rd and 4th year. And then the second round was how much later?
3 months later in October. Yeah. So with my mailer, I knew that coming right out of school and with COVID, there were some check boxes that had to be met. And one of those was financing. I had talked to a lot of the big banks, and they had all just flat out said no to a new grad. And so with all the doctors I talked to, one of the first things I mentioned was that I was looking to do seller financing. So with those 20 doctors that reached out to me, every single one was willing to do seller financing.
Wow. Man, honestly, that is so powerful. And the fact that you that was in your mailer. You mentioned the seller financing. You said this is what you're looking for, right?
It wasn't in the mailer, but that was the first thing that I talked to them about when I did call them.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that too.
Yeah.
Actually, then you're at least you're getting contact with them regardless.
And being upfront about it. Yep. From the first conversation. That's brilliant, Solomon. Seriously. And like that really gives me a lot of faith too, because I think some people, when they first hear about seller financing, it makes them uncomfortable on both sides of the equation. Like when people hear about it through the podcast, they're like, oh, seller financing. Like, am I really going to get people to be able to do that or want to do that? And maybe if someone had seen it in your mailer, maybe, I don't know how they're going to feel about it. Maybe they're uncomfortable with the idea too. But the fact that you brought that up right away and got 20 people to say yes to it is fantastic. Could you actually share a little bit of what was your pitch? Like, how did you introduce that to them? How did you make it so attractive to them?
I can't say I tried to make it too attractive, because I knew it was a big glaring red flag that I didn't want to include in the mailer. But yeah, knowing that once they reached out to me, I knew that they were serious. And so I let them know that, hey, I'm really looking into this. And because of that, I've already talked to banks and this is what I'm being told. What do you think? Yeah. What do you think about this? Is this something you can do? So that was kind of the way I asked it. Is seller financing something that you could do? So yeah. Nice. And in fact, the 9-op one, he owns the building. It's a standalone building. And so he's selling the building with it. And it was his practice is already listed. And in the listing, it said that the seller was willing to carry for the building. So I asked him about that, and he is actually willing to do both at this point.
Oh man. Yeah, this got so much better already. And you're already we were already kind of discovered okay, this is the way to go. And it just sounds even better now. Yeah. Yeah. I'm really glad you mentioned that. Man, that's fantastic. And I hope that the listeners come away with that really realizing what the power of seller financing is, especially during these times. And the banks are being really touchy about financing right now, or at least they have been recently, especially with new grads and just not knowing what people are walking into. So yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm really impressed with that.
Thanks.
And another thing too about seller financing that, if you do have to kind of push on it a little bit, that docs might not realize is if you could just sell your practice straight out, you have to pay a huge amount of taxes up front. If you seller finance it, it's spread out over a longer period of time, and it's almost like a guaranteed kind of income.
Great point.
Yeah. So if you get someone that's maybe pushing back on a little bit, they're like, oh, I don't want to do that, blah, blah, blah. You can definitely bring that up as a point. Obviously, you're not going to be rude about it, but yeah, it's another great reason if they are pushy on the seller financing, you can bring that up as well.
I am so happy to hear how much success you had with that. And I think that's, this whole second round thing, like, and sending to people again and not being worried about like whatever response you get from that. And just wringing that towel dry. Like, thank you so much for doing that. And I really applaud you on that. And it looks like you got some workable opportunities out of it. So yeah, I'm really happy that worked out for you.
Yeah. Thank you.
If you do decide with going on with one of these, or you end up somewhere else, definitely let us know. We'd love to have a follow-up episode with you. It sounds like, you got a good head on your shoulders, and I'm sure you'll be good regardless, but it's cool just to see like what options people had and then where they end up down the road.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. It'll be fun.
Yeah, man, for sure. We're here to support you. We're big adherents of coaching here at SP, so we can definitely hook you up if you're ready to go into that due diligence period. We can hook you up with Suzanne, and we'll get some things working. But otherwise, we're always going to be here. So definitely keep in touch, and we want to see where this goes.
All right, will do. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
It was kind of cool that he'd done so much reflection on the opportunities beforehand. Like, he really had like thought in depth about what are the pros, what are the cons, what does he want out of it. And honestly, it makes it really fun for us and for you guys too. Because, I mean, if we just sit here and list off objective things about the practice, I mean, yes, it's important, but at the end of the day, it's a lot of those intangibles. It's a lot of what you want. It's your mindset that really is important and is, what is interesting to listen to. So I was really glad that he had a lot of that information already kind of sorted out in his head. And it was really fun to talk through it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm finding as we continue to do these, and we've done a lot of these sort of, pre-ownership underwater consults at this point, it's becoming less and less of an objective. This is better, and it's becoming so much more about, what do you want? Like, what are the challenges that you're comfortable with? What is something that you'd be more happy with? What process fits you the best? And, I think if we had talked to, if everything were ceteris paribus, right? If the 9-op and the 5-op were the same and all these details were exactly the same, and you changed it around and this were a different person we were talking to, I think it very well could have gone with the 5-op play. I mean, that wasn't bad either, right? Like, that was actually a more functional solo practice that could later be pivoted into something larger. You can move into another space, and like that's totally viable, right? Like, and with the right person, that would have been the much better decision. But it's just it just kind of goes to show that this is not black and white, right? Like, it's a matter of searching within ourselves and our our ownership / medical history, so to speak, and talking about what is our story and what do we want it to be like. And I think for him it was kind of a no-brainer after all was said and done.
Yeah. There were two things I felt like later in the interview that really tipped me off to the 9-op being best for him. First one being that he said he had experience renovating homes, and he really felt that was important. Because I mean, that's essentially what it would be. It would be a house flip, practice flip, with renovating everything. And then secondly, he said that the office manager was like, "Can you do more?" Like, that's awesome. I've never heard anyone say that before. So, I mean, that just further confirms his, he was already leaning towards the 9-op. We figured out after the call. So that just kind of further confirms what we learned through the interview.
Yeah. And like, some of the details there sucked. I mean, right? Like, you got one hygienist that's about to leave, right? So he's got to replace that. And then he definitely needs more. Like, one hygienist is not going to be working for what he wants. Like, he's going to have to be growing this thing out and, adding more patients. The new patient flow is a total question mark. Like, no one in that building even knows what it is. There's no tracking. The systemization is like desperately needed. It's going to be a project, right? And like, for some people, you want something more ready-made, that would really kind of suck. It will, but like, I think Solomon's energy and like what what his passions are and his skills are going to make that a much smaller problem than it normally would be for just, any other given person that we'd be talking to. So I didn't have as much, reticence about saying, hey, like, I think you should go for this. And he already, came into it pretty ready to do that. I don't know if he'd be comfortable with me saying it, but like, he already had an LOI written up. It was pretty much just waiting on this conversation to be like, okay, let's do it. So I think he was already there. He kind of, arrived at the answers for himself and, was looking for external validation. And, we, decided to yield it to him this time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's really cool to see like someone's been through the show, like they kind of can think on their own. Like, it's one thing to come on and have someone tell you what to do, but to kind of come to that conclusion on your own, I think it's pretty cool. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and I think we've played some small part in empowering people to do that, and that's awesome. Like I love that we are being given that sort of I don't want to say authority, but like legitimacy to say, oh well, I'm waiting on to hear what these guys have to say before I do this thing. But ultimately, this was a person that had empowered themselves to make that decision on their own, and I think that's the most powerful thing about it, and the thing that I'm most proud of, to be a part of this, and getting people to that point where they can do this on their own, not just be like, oh well, what do these people have to say about it? What do they think I should be doing in my life, right? So yeah, that works on two fronts. I'm really proud of it.
Yeah. Great episode overall. Yeah,
For
Solomon
sure.
definitely has good head on his shoulders, and I'm sure he'll be great.
Yep.
Regardless of where he ends up. On the topic of
Mhm.
being invested in what we do, we are launching an ambassador program for dental students, D3 and below. We have an ambassador program where essentially you're spreading some of the shared practices word and our ideals and what we believe in to your school. So it works really well for people that are involved in business clubs. There's a couple perks that come along with it. If this is something you'd even remotely be interested in, visit ambassador.sharedpractices.com and take a look at what it is, what it's about. We'd love to have you guys. Honestly, the students are some of our biggest listeners, so it'd be really cool to have more of you guys involved with what we do here at Shared Practices.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know this is kind of like a teaser, and we're not really going to go too deep into details just yet, and we will, in future episodes and stuff. But I do think this is a really great opportunity for all those people out there that are, those self starters. I mean, Solomon being one of them, right? Like, started an entrepreneurial organization at his school. Like, what if there were a structure for him to kind of do that and do something within the framework of shared practices? I think that's a really exciting opportunity for a lot of people, and yeah, I think that a lot of people are going to be jumping at that opportunity, and I can't wait to see who it drums up. So, yeah, please look into that. We made a post about it too on our page, so it shouldn't be too hard to find. And if you have any questions about it, certainly email us. The names: Tyler Shared Practices, Payton Shared Practices, whatever you want to do, and just kind of let us know. We're really excited about it.
Awesome. Thank you guys, and we'll see you next time.